The thunderhead splits the sky over the plains like a seam ripped open by a rough hand. Rain comes sideways, hard as buckshot, rattling the rusted tin along the Carter place. In the blue-white strobe of lightning, the windbreak bows and snaps, and a lone shape lurches from the ditch, small, soaked, clutching something metal that clinks against bone. Samuel Carter hears it before he sees it. A faint, stubborn tapping on the barn side door. Not a fist. Knuckles. Then a pause. Then two taps exactly spaced, as if a rhythm is being remembered more than invented. He lifts the oil lantern and tells himself it's just a branch or a hinge. The dog, a smoke-gray border collie gone soft with years, stays back, ears pricked, refusing the threshold like the air beyond is charged with more than weather. Samuel unlatches the door and the storm shoves inside, wet and cold and smelling of river mud. The lantern throws a sickle of light across the step. A girl stands there in a thin red sweater that might once have belonged to someone else, hair pasted to her skull, eyes dark and steady and a face too pale for a night like this. The metal in her fist is a tag, oval, scratched, threaded on twine that bites her wrist. He sees the letters in a flash, worn partial, then rain eats the view. "Please," she says, barely. Not a question, not a full plea. The syllable is a brittle thing, held out like a brittle thing. "Inside," Samuel says, and she jerks at the thunder, doesn't flinch at him, steps past his boots and brings the storm with her. The dog slips aside. The barn smells of hay dust, old molasses, lanolin. He swings the door and throws the iron bar back into place. She's shaking without sound. Water leaks from her sleeves. Her fingers won't release the tag, like it's the only stake she has left. Samuel strips off his coat and packs it around her shoulders, feels the tiny hammer of her heart through wool. She is lighter than she looks, and she looks like not much, like a scarecrow with eyes that refuse to die out. "Name?" he asks. She glances past him, toward the far wall where Mary's old tool shelf is nailed up under a horseshoe. The shelf holds a jar of screws, a ball of twine, an empty space precisely the width of the handplane that used to live there. The girl studies that space like she recognizes the absence. Then her gaze moves to the corner post. In the lantern's weak arc, Samuel sees it too. 3 shallow notches cut waist-high in the wood, fresh enough to be pale. He never cut those. He would have known. Her mouth works. "Lucy," she says at last, the word careful and soft around the storm. Her other hand, the one not strangling the tag, fumbles something from inside the sweater, a damp square of paper that's more scar than map. Lines. An X. The X sits where his windbreak meets the old orchard he's almost given up on. Samuel's chest tightens in a way that has nothing to do with the cold. Mary had sketched a map once, years back, when the sky had edges and his heart did not, on the back of a seed order. She'd teased, called it a treasure hunt for the day he remembered how to play. He'd laughed, filed it in a drawer, and forgot. He forgets less now, or maybe everything hurts enough to feel like remembering. "Who sent you?" he asks. Lucy's eyes slip to the tag. Thunder moves the rafters. The collie groans low. "Someone who said your name," she whispers. "Said the door would open if I tapped. Like this." 2 knuckles, 2 beats. the same two that brought her here. Outside, the wind drags a long metal cry from the gate. Far off down County 12, a pair of headlights wander the storm like hungers that won't learn. Samuel tastes metal in his mouth, the old tang of dread. The lantern sputters, flares, survives. "Warm up," he tells Lucy. "Then we talk." She nods, and the movement dislodges a smell from her sweater. Diesel, river silt, a whisper of smoke. He files it without choosing to. He eases her toward the tack room, where the old potbelly stove waits with a belly full of last year's cottonwood. As he feeds the fire, Lucy sits in a hard-backed chair that used to be Mary's, Mary with a laugh like dimes in a jar, and the girl holds her tag like a compass nobody else can read. The storm lifts a fraction. Between two claps, there's the raw, clean emptiness that comes before a decision. Samuel feels it in his ribs. On the far post, 3 pale notches glow like teeth. He hears a truck slow on the road. He hears it keep going. The barn breathes. The girl watches the map that is not a map. And somewhere in him, a door that has been closed a long time begins, just begins, to hinge. Morning drips off the world like a fever breaking. The prairie is a soaked quilt, stitched in barbed wire and ditches. Out by the windbreak, the soil shows the storm's teeth. Shallow rivulets, torn grass, a pale scar where the top layer skated away. Samuel Carter stands on the step with his coffee, the mug heavy as a thought he doesn't want to carry. The collie presses against his knee. The dog has no name today. He is just weight and heat and a thudding reassurance that something still recognizes him. Inside, the girl sleeps on the worn couch, one arm above her head, the other anchored to that metal tag. He's seen people clutch photographs like that. He's seen men in harvest season hold a wrench like that, an object bigger than its use, a talisman against breaking. He does not wake her. He is a man who, for 2 years now, wakes to silence and keeps company with it until dusk. He measures feed, measures diesel, measures days by the handful. The bank measures him back. He is a widower with a field of notes and a house of ghosts. Mary Lou Johnson Carter used to hum when she mended, old hymn fragments, half remembered, half invented, and the sound used to soften the edges of walls. Some mornings he thinks he hears it upstairs. He knows that's just the wind lipping the eaves. He knows the difference. It doesn't always matter. Breakfast is oatmeal and applesauce from last summer's jars. Lucy eats like she learned to be polite even when she's starving. She does not ask for more. He ladles more anyway. She thanks him without looking up. After the bowl is empty, she watches the steam ghost from the cup between her hands like she's studying a spell. "Where's home?" he asks. She lifts a shoulder. The sweater, washed last night, dried by the stove, hangs differently, cleaner, still 2 sizes too big. "Not here," she says. "Where are you going?" "Someone said this way." Her thumb finds the tag. It taps once against the tin rim of her cup and makes a sound like a coin deciding something. "And after?" Lucy folds her lip under and releases it. The room holds its breath. "You tapped like you knew my barn," he says, gentler. "Who taught you that?" She looks at the far wall, where Mary painted a wooden sparrow during the winter they could not afford new things but could still afford time. The sparrow's eye is a dot of black that sees more than it says. Lucy studies it. Her answer, when it comes, is a thread pulled from a spool he can't see. A lady, she says. She was kind. She said, Samuel Carter opens doors when it rains. His name in her mouth does something to his back, like someone took off part of his pack without asking. He should call this in. Of course he should. The sheriff, Raymond Holt, knows him from the grain co-op and from the Christmas service where Samuel stands at the back and nods through carols that do not fit in his throat. Holt is fair, stern. The county is crawling with people who are not, coyotes who sell desperation by the mile, men who leverage fear into money, developers who sent debt from 3 counties over and breed it into deeds. He thinks about phones. He thinks about paperwork. He thinks about how the storm found this child and set her down exactly on the seam where his grief meets the ground. He thinks about Mary drawing maps on seed orders and hiding notes in flour tins just to make him curse and smile the same minute. He does not know why Lucy's damp paper shows his orchard, but he knows, down where spine meets gut, that the X she held is not random. School's out at 9, he says, as if he's read a calendar. Grace Thompson drives past then. If there's trouble on the road, she'll know. He hears himself and wonders dimly if he is buying time or making a plan. He decides he can be both. The collie sets his chin on Lucy's knee. The girl doesn't startle. She scratches the old dog between the ears with a gentle certainty that rhymes with knowing. The morning puts itself together. Samuel checks fences, bails a section that didn't drown, sets a bucket under a barn leak that has learned every song the county has to sing. He studies the windbreak without staring. He sees the place Lucy's ex lives beneath the sod. His hands want to dig. His hands want to wait. He chooses waiting for now, because digging is a kind of saying yes, and yes is a bridge that only holds if you intend to cross. At 9 sharp, Grace's dustless sedan noses along County 12, today washed clean and shining with puddles. She breaks at the Carter mailbox like she always does, brings him the co-op flyer and a cherry pie he'll pretend to return the dish for. Grace has a voice like warm linen and eyes that see more than they admit. Road's a mess by the river, she reports, but the bridge held. Sheriff Holt is posted there making sure no one does anything foolish. Foolish like what? Samuel asks, as if his house does not contain exactly the kind of foolish that saves or ruins a life. Like trying to cross with a truck full of wet trouble, she says. Word is a coyote dumped a van last night when the water rose. Deputy says there's a child missing. The collie barks once from inside, and Lucy's shadow skirts the kitchen doorway. Grace does not miss it. She also does not change expression. She lifts the pie a fraction, like she's weighing it. You got company? She asks lightly. Maybe, he says. Then, yes. The honesty surprises him with how little it hurts. Grace's mouth makes a line that is not disapproval and not delight. It is calculation, but the kind that protects. Holt will be by, she says. He always is, after a storm. Put the coffee on. The word always folds a small tent over the morning. She hands him the pie and drives on. He puts the pie on the counter and the coffee on the stove and tries to hear Mary humming between the clicks. Instead, he hears tires. Sheriff Holt's cruiser wears the weather like a badge. The man who steps from it is big without being cruel, his face a topographic map of squint and patience. "Sam," Holt says, hat brim dripping. "Heard you got through the night." "Barely." Samuel opens the door and does not step aside. He realizes Holt's eyes have already counted the second pair of shoes by the mat, the tiny ones, and the wet sweater draped over a chairback. "Storm did business down by the river," Holt says. "We're looking for a little girl who was separated from folks." "You seen anyone on the road?" Samuel's mouth goes dry. It is not fear that dries it. It is choice. Lucy is behind him, still as the sparrow Mary painted. The tag on her wrist does not make sound now, but Samuel can hear it anyway. He thinks of the 3 notches on the barn post. He thinks of the X on the damp map. He thinks of the way the storm put her on his step like a question only he is allowed to answer. "I saw headlights after midnight," he says, measuring each word against the air. "Nothing since." Holt studies him, then the rain, then Samuel again. "If you do," he says, "you call me first. Not the county line. Me." He taps his card on the jam. "There are men out there who would use a child to sell a headline." His jaw sets. "We don't let them." The cruiser rolls away. The coffee boils. In the quiet that returns, Samuel feels the world rearrange by a hair. He sets 2 cups on the table. He sets one more. He does not say the plan out loud because plans can splinter when they are named. He just moves toward the places where the map, the notches, and the storm point together. He tells himself he is only checking fence again. He tells himself many things he does not need to believe to act. "Eat," he tells Lucy, because that he can say. Then, while the kettle sighs, he lifts the shovel from its hook. The collie rises. The windbreak waits, holding whatever it has been holding since before last night, since before Mary's last laugh, since maybe before Samuel ever learned to open a door when it rains. If você curte histórias assim, tensão que aperta, segredos que respiram sob a terra, deixa teu like, diz nos comentários de onde você está assistindo e se inscreve no canal para não perder o próximo capítulo. Now, let's go see what the ground has been hiding. By noon, the ground has stopped weeping and started listening. The windbreak lays its whisper along the fence line. The orchard gathers sparrows like ideas. Samuel carries the shovel the way he once carried Mary's hand, carefully, like the grip itself might mean more than the work. Lucy keeps to his left, small and quiet, the dog patting a triangle behind them, knitting their shadows together. They stop where the sod kinks at the edge of the windbreak. At a scab of earth the storm peeled back. The X from her damp paper lives here, exactly where 2 old roots cross like stubborn arms. In the hush between gusts he hears a soft rhythm. 2 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Not from Lucy this time. From somewhere below, a memory trapped under dirt. Samuel sets the shovel and the earth gives grudgingly, wet and black and heavy with the smell of pennies and rain. He works a ring first, a careful circle, like he's afraid to bruise what he hasn't met. Lucy kneels without waiting to be asked, fingers combing loose clods, nails blacking, not minding. She keeps her eyes on the hole. He watches the trees for the sound of an engine, a voice, a change in the day. 6 inches down, the dirt turns granular. 8 inches, and the shovel scrapes something that answers with a dull domestic thunk. Wood. He pulls, pries, exposes corners. A cedar box, oilcloth wrapped and tied with rotted twine. The knots fall apart at a look. The smell that comes up is clean, the old clean of camphor and linen chests. The lid is signed barely. A shallow scratch that might be a whim or a will. MLJ, he thinks. Mary Lou Johnson, before the Carter, sat on her name. He doesn't breathe for 2 seconds that stretch long enough to measure a life. Then he throws the latches. Inside, a cloth bundle, a small brass key on a ribbon, and paper that has survived by wanting to be read. The top sheet holds his name in a hand he knows better than his own. Samuel, big, plain, the way she wrote when she wanted him to have no excuse. Lucy is all eyes. The dog huffs, lays chin on paws, watches him like a judge who forgives before the verdict. His thumbs shake. He finds the fold and opens the letter. Sam, if you're reading this, it means the rain did what I couldn't. It brought you outside yourself. I hid this when the orchard took sick and the bank started to learn our names by taste. I didn't tell you because I was scared you'd sell hope to buy certainty. The key is for a lock you haven't seen yet. The map I left under the plane on my shelf points the way I wanted you to live, forward, even when it looks sideways. If a girl knocks 2 and 2 in a storm, open the door. She belongs to us before anyone else. Her path crosses ours because paths do when they need to. The rest is in the earth. Love, M. He reads the words twice and then once more without seeing them, only feeling their weight settle into his ribs. He hates that she knew him so well. He loves that she still does. Is it from the lady? Lucy's voice is threadfine. It is, he says. He doesn't say her name. The syllables are brittle today. He lifts the brass key by its ribbon. It is narrow, old-fashioned, stamped 317 on the bow. The number vibrates in some dusty cabinet in his head, hardware bins, bus station lockers, post office boxes, but refuses to sit. Lucy's tag glints. The oval is more worn than he thought. He eases it into the light and sees the ghost of letters amid scratches. RYL. The ribbon on the key is the same cotton blue Mary used to tie her hair when she varnished frames. Coincidence is a river. He lets it run through him. He unwraps the cloth bundle. Inside, a compact oil-dark bundle of papers twined tight. A flash drive in a tiny zip bag. A Polaroid of Mary standing where he stands now, hair ragged against the same windbreak, chin up, eyes amused like she has a good joke and time to tell it. In the lower right corner, Mary has written a date that shouldn't hurt but does, the week before the diagnosis, the season when all the apples came in sweet and the frost held off like a gentleman. Beneath the bundle is a field book, the kind survey crews carry with faded green covers. He flips it open, and the orchard's routes become lines, bearings, little pencil numbers. A sketched square marks Old Cellar, bricked, and under it, Gate to Creek Culvert, iron wheel stiff. A later page holds a list of names and a few dollar figures beside them, none belonging to him, none familiar except the last. Mallory, easement violation, CR. He thinks of Ethan Mallory's development signs staked along County 12. Mallory Ridge, lots coming 2026. He thinks of the way Ethan shakes hands like wringing a rag. Pressure hums at the edges of the day. Not just weather. The world seems to lean in a degree. Someone's here, Lucy says suddenly, quiet and absolute. He hears it. Tires on wet gravel, the slow, controlled roll of a vehicle that wants to be a shadow and fails. He pushes the box back into the hole, drags a sheet of burlap over it, kicks loose dirt like a man who's done this before, like anyone would bury the same secret twice. Lucy doesn't need instruction. She scatters leaves with a fox's economy. The dog's ears ladder forward. A black SUV ghosts along the fence line, windows ribbed with water and tinted hard. It doesn't stop, but it slows where the sod is raw and the windbreak breaks just enough to offer a view. Samuel stands up empty-handed, turns his back to the hole the way a man does when he has nothing to hide, and scratches the dog's head as if that was what he came to do. He tastes the metal of his own name. The SUV moves on, then parks 2 fields down at the cut-in where the county road meets the old maintenance track. 2 men get out. One is thin in a way that looks sharp. The other is thick in a way that looks paid for. They confer, then laugh, then rest on the hood like a claim staked with elbows. The thin one lifts a phone and takes a picture of nothing in particular. Pressure becomes shape. Samuel feels the line from the buried box through his spine to the 2 pale notches in the barn post. Everything connects if you want it badly enough. They work casual on the surface, quick beneath. The box returns to the tack room under a floorboard, Mary lifted once to chase a mouse. The key he threads onto a loop of twine and knots under his shirt. The field book he slides into the inside pocket where the Bible rode to Mary's funeral. He doesn't open the twined bundle yet. He lets it be mass before momentum. By late afternoon, the men at the track have been joined by a third. Not from the county. Too polished. He wears clean boots in a place that punishes those. Even in rainlight, Samuel recognizes him. Ethan Mallory, smile like a brochure, eyes like escrow. Mallory studies the tree line with a developer's optimism and a hawk's patience. He speaks into his collar, and Samuel knows 3 things at once. The old cellar in the orchard is more than a hole. The brass key will fit a lock that matters to men who wear new boots on mud. And the storm last night was not only weather, it was timing. As if to confirm, Sheriff Holt's cruiser noses back into the lane at dusk. He parks short of the porch. He doesn't look at the SUV, which is its own looking. He wraps the jam and steps into the smell of percolator and wet dog. Men from nowhere, Holt says. You seen them? I've seen them, Samuel says. They think you have something they lost. Holt's gaze drops to Lucy, who stands by the sink with a dish towel she's not sure how to hold. His face shifts, softens without going slack. Afternoon, miss. Lucy nods once. She has learned the angle of her chin that makes her a ghost when she needs to be. Sir. Holt's eyes catch the old sparrow Mary painted and stay there a beat. He puts his hat on the table like a promise to leave it behind. Sam, men like that don't come for nothing. They come because they're sure. If you got a thing that ties a child to a crime, you put it in my truck and I'll put my badge on it. If you got a thing that ties a crime to a man with a billboard, you do the same. If you got both, you call me before you do anything else. Samuel hears two truths in that speech and one fear. Holt doesn't say deputy once. Samuel thinks of the thin man's phone. He thinks of how easily phones become maps when the wrong hands are on the wheel. We'll be careful, he says. Holt nods like a man who hears we and understands it's not misspoken. He tips his hat to Lucy, touches 2 fingers to the sparrow, and goes. Night gathers itself like a cloak. The orchard fades to a listening dark. In the kitchen, Samuel lifts the twined bundle and cuts it with a paring knife. Inside are receipts, handwrit lists, and a ledger page that stains his fingers with old carbon. The columns are neat. The names are not. He finds Mallory again, tied to easements and a payment to R. Kincaid. Ray Kincaid, the deputy who brings donuts no one eats to Sunday school, who smiles too wide and has a cousin on every job crew that pays cash. There are dates and a diagram, a culvert gate under the old cellar iron wheel stiff, a note in Mary's hand. If water moves at the right hour, it brings what men drop. What do they drop? Lucy asks, leaning in, breathing careful so as not to blow the past off the page. Things men aren't supposed to carry, he says. Keys, packages, people. Her mouth tightens. The tag on her wrist finds his eye and stays there. The lady said you open doors when it rains, she says. Maybe there's a door under the trees. He looks at the map. He looks at the window where the orchard is now a darker dark that knows your name. The men on the track will not sit forever. Pressure is a fuse. He can hear it fizz. Boots, he says. Coats. He tucks the ledger inside his jacket, the field book in his back pocket, the key against his chest. The collie circles, tail low, reading the weather in human bones. They step into the night like it's a room they've rented and can afford to leave in a hurry. The grass wipes their knees. The windbreak accepts their shadows. In the lot, the SUV doors shut, slow and quiet. The orchard takes them anyway. Something is buried, something more than a box. And the world has noticed. They find the cellar by subtraction, the square where grass grows richer, where the ground gives a little underboot, where a lattice of roots outlines a memory. Half the bricks are sunk, the rest crusted with moss that smells like old pennies in baptism. An iron ring sits flush with the soil like a closed eye. The flashlight Samuel carries is a stub from a drawer where batteries go to die. It gives them a lurching circle of light and then steadies as if pride woke in it. The ring moves on the second pull. The trapdoor lifts with a shudder and an exhale, and cold breath spills up from a place that kept the summer once and kept secrets after. Wooden steps descend into a square of black. Samuel tests one with his heel. It murmurs but holds. He sends the beam down. Brick walls, sweating. A low arch at the far end. The dull, round shoulder of an iron wheel embedded in mortar, tattooed with rust. Lucy's hand finds the hem of his jacket. She doesn't tug. She checks he's real. The dog waits on the lip, unwilling to commit to stares he hasn't approved of yet. Samuel draws air, tastes clay and a mineral sting. He goes. The iron wheel is waist-high, heavy as a promise, welded to a gate whose teeth run into the floor. He plants both feet and puts his shoulder into it. It resists, then remembers and groans like an old man with a story. 1/4 turn and the creek 40 yards off starts talking to itself louder. Half a turn and water sluices underfoot, black and quick, taking leaves and seeds and the wreckage of 100 summers. A final heave and something clicks. Metal on metal, a catch releasing, and a second channel opens. Samuel hears the sound he didn't know he was waiting for. Hollow, stuttering knocks. Not from the gate, but from the culvert beyond, like small things bouncing forward in increments as the water worries them along. Light, he says. Lucy aims the beam into the arch. The water can't decide between hurry and patience. In the seam where the culvert mouth lips into the cellar, a wedge of debris catches. Sticks, a length of baling twine, a stiff wad of cloth. He reaches in, and the creek bites his wrist, cold and clean. He drags the wad free. It hits the flagstones with a weight that is not fabrics. He peels it. Inside, a belt pouch, rubber-wrapped, taped. He cuts tape with a nail he prayed into useful sharpness years ago. The pouch surrenders a phone sealed in a freezer bag, a stick drive, and a stack of cards rubber-banded together. ID, debit, a laminate with a name and logo that belong to men who don't love laws, and a business card embossed with a dove no church he knows would claim. The name etched there, Caleb Rourke. Phone number. 2 words hand-inked on the back. Stage 2. The second thing the water gives them is a chain of dull metal triangles linked like fish scales, a set of man-traps in miniature, the kind you'd pack if you meant to scare people more than catch them. Not for animals, for signaling. The third thing is a flash of tin that clinks against stone with a knowing little sound. Samuel pinches it from the eddy. An oval tag, twin to Lucy's, stamped 317 clean and deep. Lucy's breath leaves the air. She holds out her wrist without being asked. Samuel slides the brass key into the tin ring at the tag's base. It slots home with the easy intimacy of a habit. The turn is gentle. A little lock inside releases with a sigh, and the twine noosed around her wrist falls slack. A red welt ghosts her skin, an old circle that will take a while to forget it was held. Who put it on you? His voice is not as soft as he wants. She lifts her left shoulder again, which in her language means no one you'll meet kindly. Then, because she is brave, she says, "A man with eyes like the river when it goes wrong." She watches the freed tag in his palm and adds, "He took things from us and put things on us so we couldn't go back or ahead. He said the door would open when it rained." She swallows. It did. He wraps the tag and key back in the freezer bag because proof is a kind of clothing. The phone he doesn't power. He values not being found by a ping. He tucks them into the inside pocket with the ledger. The cellar has stopped giving for the moment. The culvert gurgles its satisfaction and then returns to chewing the world smaller. He closes the gate halfway to slow the flood's voice. Back under the trees, the night has changed. Not louder, more arranged. Voices are objects now. The SUV doors open like arguments. Dry leaves crackle with careful feet. The men aren't in a hurry. They're in control. They split. The thin one, Rourke, if the card tells the truth, cuts through the windbreak, the kind of man who reads branches as lines on a palm. The heavy one stays with the SUV, watchful. Mallory hangs back just enough to claim he was near but not part, if anyone writes it down later. Their angle will put them on the cellar in 5 minutes. Grace's taillights glow briefly at the far end of County 12. She slows, sees shapes that don't fit the road, keeps rolling. Sensible, Samuel thinks. Also brave in the way that counts. She will circle and come in from the west, or she will call Holt and speak fast. Go, Samuel whispers to the dog, pointing toward the field's low end. The collie melts into weeds, no bark, no rustle, a shadow that knows duty. Lucy, when I say down, you're the ground. If I say run, you go for the sparrow on my barn and hide under the feed bin. You don't decide again until you hear my voice. I can help, she says. There is metal in it. You will, he says, and hears Mary laugh, pleased. They don't have 5 minutes. They have 3.5. He moves them to the left of the cellar opening and pulls the trapdoor over with his nails so the square is shadow again. He brushes their footprints with a branch the way a hand forgets a face on purpose. He kneels and palms small stones from the ground, holds 3, gives Lucy 2. If we need to talk without words, he says, 1 stone on the trunk means wait, 2 means now, 3 means gone. He shows her the motions. She learns with the speed of someone who hasn't had the luxury of slow. Voices now, clear enough to sort. Told you he's the type to poke what's buried, the thin one, Rourke says, amused. And I told you, Mallory answers, civilized and bored in a way that leaks cruelty. The old man is in debt. Men in debt make deals if the terms are clear. Then let's make them clear, Rourke says and treads on the exact square of earth Samuel resmoothed. Down, Samuel breathes. The orchard accepts them. The flashlight is already off. The iron wheel holds its breath. Rourke pauses. The night goes on pretending. He squats, touches the earth, smiles like a man shaking hands with himself after a job well done. He straightens and turns to Mallory. You brought the pretty speech. I brought the part where we mean it. Mallory steps forward. His boots make honest mud sounds. Samuel, he calls, pitched like a neighbor. Evening. We're sorry to come by uninvited, but we had a terrible incident last night near your place. Real tragedy. And we're looking for a missing asset. The word hits the trees wrong. The county sheriff is involved, Mallory continues, but we thought we'd check on you first because I care about my neighbors. Also, there's a deed matter we can clean up while we're here. An easement that got hairy in the 70s, something your dear late wife took notes on. I'd be happy to make your life easier if you happen to have paperwork that might be confusing for a buyer. Lucy's hand tightens on the stones. The tag, free now, rests warm in Samuel's pocket like a second pulse. He imagines the ledger's neat columns under Mallory's thumb, the phone in a bag with numbers on it that lead to rooms with no windows. He imagines saying no and waking up in a county where his fences don't mean what fences should. The collie's shape appears 20 yards behind the heavy man. The dog's ears are up. The tail is neutral. He's waiting for a verb. Samuel gives him one. Now, he whispers, not loud enough to be words. He tosses a small stone toward the metal watering trough beside an old stump. The stone rings the trough, bright, sharp, a sound that embarrasses silence. 3 heads swing. In that breath, the collie slides behind the heavy man and bumps his knee. Careful, decisive. The man stumbles, curses, catches the trough's rim. Rourke spins toward the sound, gun hand rising because of course it exists. He doesn't draw. He sees nothing. He laughs once, the kind he'd call a warning in a different room. Games, he says. Don't. Samuel stands, slow, empty hands lifted, and steps into the smear of moon that found them. He is not a big man. He carries his years like a scar he keeps forgetting to hide, but something about the way he holds the orchard behind him, like a wall that will not move, makes Mallory blink. Evening, Samuel says. If you step on my trees, you pay rent. Mallory smiles the brochure. Sam, I want to help you out of a tangle. You have something I need to take to the authorities so we all sleep better. You give it to me, I square up that easement problem that's haunted your north line, and we talk about buying that ridge for above market. You keep the house. The rest, I fix. You get peace. And if I don't? Samuel asks. We drag your land through court until you dream about signatures, Mallory says lightly, and our friend Caleb here finds a reason to spend more time on your property than you do. Rourke is not pretending to be a neighbor. He is reading the dark for movement that isn't weather. His eyes slip past Lucy without catching because she's made herself smaller than a branch. He tilts his head toward the cellar. He smells iron, water, the faint ghost of wet plastic. His smile is genuine. Hello, door, he says to the ground. I have a sheriff, Samuel says. Deputy Kincaid is working nights, Mallory says, like reciting a menu item. Samuel notes the substitution. Grace was right to keep rolling. He risks a second throw. He flicks a pebble into the grass 2 yards to Rourke's right. The man's head turns that way. Lucy moves in the opposite direction, silent as regret, sidling toward the iron ring. She presses her palm to it. Samuel hears nothing. Rourke hears something else, faint and feminine. The hum of a trunk line on a phone in his pocket waking to a signal it thought it muted. His attention splits for a hair. Lucy lifts, slow. The trapdoor rises an inch. The creak murmurs, sensing chance. Rourke pivots back, gun half drawn. Don't, he says, and the syllable is a stick snapped between 2 boys. The dog appears behind him, not attacking, placing himself where a body will fall if someone is foolish. Samuel meets Rourke's eyes and lets his own go flat as winter. You point that at a child, he says, and I'm a different man. Rourke's mouth twitches. He holsters. He likes control more than blood. We'll all be friends if you give me what I came for, he says. a phone, a ledger, and the girl. The development piece is a bonus for my colleague. I take my things, he takes his, you keep your porch till spring. Everybody wins. Everybody you can count, Samuel says. Rourke's shoulders lift as if to say, suit yourself. He steps forward. Now, Samuel tells the dog. The collie lunges, not to bite, but to take Rourke's boot off the ground. It works because surprise is stronger than teeth. Rourke stumbles, bangs his knee against the iron wheel, and the gate jumps. Water snarls. Lucy, who has been waiting for a verb of her own, throws herself into the lift. The trapdoor yawns. Creek breath booms in the cellar. Leaves whirl. Two things happen fast. The water pulses hard enough to dislodge more contraband from the culvert, a second bag that smacks the flagstones like a gavel, and the heavy man tries to swing a flashlight like a club, because panic makes fools. His beam hits Mallory's eye. Mallory curses, shies, steps on the moss-tricky brick Samuel warned no one about because he never had to. He skids and sits down hard, civilized boots gone impolite with mud. The second bag splits and bleeds papers under the beam. Names slur their way into the light. One is Kincaid. Another is Mallory. Another is a number matched to a photo of a truck with children's faces pixelated badly enough to be recognizable by anyone who's lived a real day. Don't, Rourke says again, but this time it's to the creek, to the night, to the physics of things. And then a horn rips the dark in half. Grace's sedan, high-beamed and unapologetic, rams the ditch berm by the track and bounces into the lot like an insult delivered with manners. She lays on the horn, won't let go, calls out of the window in a teacher's command voice. Sheriff en route. Cameras live. Headlights on you. Rourke calculates in less than a breath. Fight or pull back? Arrest or delay? He chooses the thin cut between. He retreats 2 steps, holsters everything, and recites a line he can live with later. We'll be back with a warrant, he says to the trees. Keep the child warm. His eyes land on Lucy and say different things. His smile tells her he knows how doors work and storms end. Then he and the heavy man pile into the SUV. Mallory takes longer. Pride always does, but he follows, face arranged already for a statement no one asked him for. They reverse fast, fishtail, and go. The orchard inhales. The dog sits, tongue lolling, unbothered by law. Grace rolls farther in, kills the horn, and finally breathes, hard. You pick your nights, she says from the window. Seems nights pick me, Samuel says, which is close enough to true. He gathers the second bag, the papers, the phone. He shuts the gate to a low hum. The iron wheel creaks and settles like a story that wants ending. He closes the trap door. The orchard goes back to being a room with the lights off. They have proof. They have a child. They have men who won't wait until morning to want both. And the creek, generous and mean, has more to give. Sheriff Holt doesn't use his siren. He doesn't need to. His headlights appear like a decision made somewhere good. He stops short of the yard again, steps out with his hands empty, and his chest full of purpose that doesn't shout. Grace is already talking, concise, stacking facts like fence posts. Holt listens like auditors do, face quiet, eyes running numbers. Kincaid? Samuel asks. Homesick, Holt says, and the phrase feels like an apology to the language. He'll get well when it pays. He lifts his radio and says words that make space on the air for help that isn't stupid. I've got Deputy Ruiz and State on the way. They'll come dark. Keep your phones dark too. We're already ghosts, Grace says. Holt steps to the orchard edge, studies the disturbed square, the iron ring scrape, the newly honest mud on honest boots. He doesn't touch. He looks long. You opened something, he says to Samuel. Mary did, Samuel answers. He hands over the freezer bag with the phone and the first drive, the ledger copy Mary scribed, the business card with the dove that isn't church. Holt's fingers are careful like surgeons. There's more, Samuel adds, and shows him the second bag the Creek coughed up, a thin folder laminated against stupidity, a bank draft made out to Mallory Ridge Holdings, from an outfit with a Wyoming P.O. box, and an owner of record no one will find without prying, and a list of bus locker numbers with cities that carry storms in their ribs: El Paso, Laredo, McAllen, Council Bluffs, which means the web is wider than the river. Holt's mouth thins on Kincaid's name again. He tucks the folder inside his jacket like heat. We're going to do this clean, he says, or it doesn't hold. And until clean arrives, Grace says, the men will be back with fewer manners. As if summoned by the thought, the SUV's engine mutters from the road's shoulder. Not close, not far. A second set of lights waits beyond it, patient, higher, truckish. Holt moves them quick. Grace, put your sedan behind the hay bales like you meant to and turn off everything that glows. Sam, put the girl somewhere that isn't here. Root cellar, attic, between the mattresses, I don't care, just make it where a man's eyes won't go first. I'll stand where men's eyes do. Samuel doesn't argue. He brings Lucy to the barn, to the tack room where the potbelly stove is still warm like an old cat. He pulls the feed bin out 3 inches, finds the space Mary had carved for winter potatoes when she wanted to hide treats from him and failed. It is a box built into a box, lined with old quilts that smell of cedar and thyme. In, he says. Lucy slides without a sound, a fox slipping into a root. She looks up from the dim and is suddenly as young as the number on a birthday cake he hopes he will one day buy. If you don't come back, she says, and can't decide how to finish it. I'll come back, he says, and builds the sentence like fence, post by post. If I don't, you run to Grace's house and knock 2 and 2. She opens in all weather. He hands her Mary's Polaroid because it is the only saint he trusts. This is my yes, he says. Keep it warm. He slides the bin back. The gap becomes wall again. He picks up the old .22 he uses for snakes and mercy and knows it's a gesture more than a solution. He tucks the brass key under his shirt where his heartbeat understands it. He steps into the yard. Holt stands in the lane like a man checking the weather, thumbs hooked in his vest, hat brim low. The SUV rolls in, slow as a sermon. It stops close enough to be an insult. Rourke gets out first, empty hands, eyes that catalog. Mallory comes second, smile still practicing. The third vehicle pulls nose to tail behind the first. Its door opens and Deputy Kincaid steps down, not sick, face oiled with apology no one asked for. Knew it, Grace mutters near Samuel's elbow. Evening, Sheriff, Kincaid says, tone bright. Heard you had a situation. I figured you'd want help. He frowns toward Rourke as if strangers surprise him as much as felonies do. Who are your friends? Holt doesn't turn his head. Go home, Ray, he says. You're on leave. Kincaid smiles broader. I'm on justice, he says, and touches the butt of his pistol not as threat but as punctuation. What's in the orchard, Sam? Apples, Samuel says. Rourke is done with ceremony. Here's the part where we stop dancing, he says. We're taking our property and our paperwork. You can keep your trees. Property is people with tags and numbers, Grace says, voice clean enough to cut. Paperwork is something men invent to excuse how they hold them. Mallory lifts both palms. No one is talking about people, he says quickly. My concerns are real estate, a parcel that needs clarity. If we solve that, everyone goes to bed on time. Kincaid's eyebrows say oops at the word people. Rourke's eyes say idiot at Mallory. Holt's body doesn't move, but the center of the night leans to him like a nail to a magnet. State will be here in 2 minutes, he says, which is the kind of lie men like Rourke hear when it's already true. You can wait and put your names on their recordings, or you can leave and we'll visit you later with paper you can't buy. He tips his head at Kincaid. Ray, last call. Kincaid's jaw decides before his brain does. He swings his sidearm up not at Holt, not at Samuel, but at the barn, the big angle where a person could be if a person were unwisely visible. He means it as pressure, not violence. The dog takes it as a verb. The collie becomes streak and teeth. He hits Kincaid low on the calf, not to maul, but to change math. Kincaid yelps, fires reflex, the shot cracking the night open. It takes a chunk of door, not a person. Holt moves 2 steps in a single muscle, and has Kincaid's wrist, has the gun, has the deputy on his knees with dignity removed like a tourniquet that's been on too long. You're done, he tells him, calm as Sunday. You ever were. Rourke's hand goes for his jacket. Grace's sedan erupts horn and light again because her finger never left, and because spectacle is a kind of shield. Samuel takes his .22 and does a thing he hasn't done since coyotes worried the lambs. He shoots the ground 1 foot in front of a man to remind him that dirt kicks up and fear tastes the same on any tongue. The crack is small. The message is not. Rourke halts, reads the room anew, reaches very slowly up and laces his fingers behind his head, grin back on like a mask stapled. Easy, he says. We're all neighbors. Not tonight, Samuel thinks. State rolls in then. 2 cruisers with calm as their siren, tires quiet, cameras open. Deputy Ruiz steps out like the law you hire when you intend to keep a promise. Evening, she says to the group, tone level. To Holt, you call. We came. Who needs bracelets? Kincaid first, Holt says. Then the tourist with the dove card if he can't account for his Sunday. He eyes Mallory last, almost kind. And if Mr. Mallory wants to chat about a draft from a ghost company, we'll make time. Everything that was tight begins to breathe. Rourke's watchful smile wavers when Ruiz reads him his rights like she means them. He submits because angles exist in the morning. Mallory doesn't wait for steel. He goes for speed talking, offers his card like a rosary. says words like misunderstanding and due diligence and civic partner. Ruiz takes the card with fingers that don't shake and puts it in a bag like any other piece of paper men pull from their coats when they need to feel necessary. Holt looks at Samuel, then at the barn. Girl safe? She is, Samuel says. Keep her so, Holt says, and he means tonight, and until. He motions to Ruiz. Get photographs at the cellar. We'll log the contraband as Creek vomit and let the judge decide the rest. Grace, I never saw you. Sam, you were in your kitchen doing dishes when all this happened. Old dog? Good dog. The collie pants, pleased to be named. They start to move the pieces toward morning. The men leave in cars that now feel smaller. The orchard shakes off the confrontation like a wet coat, then sits, thoughtful. Holt lingers by the iron ring. He touches the wheel and makes a face at the rust. Mary always did like to set a table before she invited guests, he says, almost smiling. She laid this one simple. He glances at Samuel. You got more of her stashed where the world can find it? Samuel hears the fear under the jest. A little, he admits. Enough to make them come again if we're sloppy. We won't be, Holt says. Sleep in shifts. I'll post a car on the road unmarked, eyes forward. He tips his hat to the barn like it can hear. Maybe it can. Morning comes, he says, which is what men say when they need it to. When the cruisers go, the world is louder with frogs. Grace kills her lights and finally lets her hands leave the horn. She stands in the yard, hair loose from its clip, eyes glazed with adrenaline's frost melting. I brought you a pie, she says, absurd and necessary. I owe you a lot more than a dish, Samuel says. You owe me an ending where the right people lose, she says. Hurry up and write it. Samuel opens the bin and lifts Lucy out. She still has Mary's Polaroid clutched in her fist. She lets him see it once, then tucks it under her sweater like a rib. Did we win? She asks. We survived, he says. Winning's a morning word. She nods as if that's enough for now. She strokes the dog's neck. The collie sighs like a saint. The barn breathes. The creek, satisfied, backs off a hair. They are all wet, chilled, spent, and more awake than sleep will tolerate. The night isn't over, but it has bent. There is one more thing to do. Samuel takes the brass key from under his shirt and hangs it on a nail beside the sparrow Mary painted. He sets the freed tin tag beneath it. He puts the ledger and the drives in a metal flour tin and slides it behind the false panel under the stairs Mary carved, when she wanted to keep Christmas from curious nieces. He turns to Lucy. Tomorrow we talk to a judge, he says. Tonight we make tea. She smiles the smallest smile she owns. Yes, she says. Outside, somewhere a coyote calls into a night that has opinions. The call doesn't sound hungry. It sounds like it knows the rules changed. Morning does what it always does in good counties. It shows up even where it isn't deserved. The sun doesn't exactly shine, the clouds have a hangover, but the light is honest. Dew turns the yard into a field of tiny, stubborn stars. The orchard holds its secrets like fruit that will ripen when it wants to. State came at dawn for statements. Ruiz took hers with the patience of a woman who knows paperwork is a weapon when you aim it straight. Holt left Kincaid at the jail with a silence that will itch him clean through arraignment. Rourke sat in a cell and smiled like he owns the concept of time. Mallory sweated through 2 shirts and a list of phrases he'll regret under oath. The phone and drives coughed up enough to interest a federal voice. The ledger's tidy lines made crooked men trip. The easement Mary sketched, misfiled conveniently in a basement drawer at the county building, reappeared under Ruiz's hand with a stamp that said always here. It nails Mallory's ridge into trees and creek buffer like commandments. There will be no lots. Not this year. Not on this land. Grace brought coffee that tasted better than coffee gets to taste. She put her hand on Lucy's shoulder like consent, not command. "We'll get your feet under you," she said, and that sentence had bricks in it already. Pastor Elaine, who runs the shelter without calling it that. Nurse Carla, who knows bruises and how to move paperwork like a river moves silt. Mrs. Alvarez, who can say out loud the names Lucy is done saying until she chooses otherwise. Holt asked Samuel a question no man is ready for before he's ready for it. "You want to foster?" Samuel's tongue tried to say, "I am too old for firsts." His ribs said yes a long way before sound. He looked at the sparrow Mary painted and at the nail where the brass key now lives, reflecting a tiny sun. He looked at the 3 pale notches on the barn post and felt them glow like they knew their job was finished. He said, "We'll try," and what he meant was, "We will open any door she knocks." By noon, a judge in a sweater vest said temporary words into a microphone that made them sound like stone. Lucy's status got a name that protected more than it exposed. Holt signed, Grace witnessed, Samuel stood straighter without noticing. On the way back, they stopped at the orchard. Lucy touched the iron ring and did not flinch. Samuel closed the gate all the way. The creek's voice settled into a contented mutter that sounded like enough. Afternoon brought a call from a number that used to make Samuel's stomach fold. The bank. They had a new tone, flavored with apology and maybe pie. The easement, real, recorded, qualified the Carter place for a conservation grant that doesn't move as slowly as grants used to. Paired with Mallory Ridge Holdings' sudden loss of appetite and a county fund Holt remembered at exactly the right time, Samuel's notes shifted from impossible to manageable. He would not have to sell the ridge or the house. He would mend fences with wire that came from money that didn't hurt. He would plant trees Mary always said this ground wanted. He would sleep sometimes. They ate pie on the step because plates were too fancy for men who almost didn't get to worry about dishes. The dog lay on his side and dreamed of the verb now. Grace told a joke about judges in sweaters no one would repeat in a courtroom. Lucy took the Polaroid out of her sweater and set it on her knee. She looked at Mary's eyes the way saplings look at wind, learning, adjusting, grateful for the push. "What did the lady see under here?" Lucy asked, tapping the step's wood with one finger, 2 beats, the way you call a door that knows you. "Enough of the future to make a plan," Samuel said. He thought about how Mary must have cut the 3 notches in the barn post, one for the storm that would bring a girl, One for the box he would have to find. One for the moment he would have to choose the kind of man he is after loss. He had chosen last night. He would keep choosing. "Do I have to go away?" Lucy asked then, not afraid exactly, but braced. "You have to go to bed on time," Grace said, half mocking, soft. "You have to go to school. You have to go to the doctor when Nurse Carla says. You don't have to go anywhere you don't choose without one of us standing in the doorway." Lucy held that sentence up to the light the way she'd held the steaming mug that first morning. She turned it this way and that, and then pocketed it like a tool that fit her hand. The collie lifted his head and looked past them, ears pricking toward the road. Not danger. Visitors. Pastor Elaine with shoes sensible enough to chase trouble and catch it. Mrs. Alvarez with a tote bag of clothes that had lived once on other shoulders and would live better here. Ruiz again off duty now with a smile she didn't use at work. The yard filled with voices that were not there on storm night and will be there on the next one, because that is how you win where weather always intends to test you. Late light found the brass key on the nail and set it glowing like something freshly minted. Samuel reached up and touched it with one finger. He didn't have a prayer exactly, not the kind that rhymes, but he had a sentence. "Thank you for the map." He didn't need to say to whom. When evening slid down, Lucy dozed in the chair that used to be Mary's, chin tucked, hand loose at last. Samuel washed 2 cups and then 1 more. He heard Mary humming where the eaves still leak, and this time it didn't hurt. The dog snored. Grace wrote a list. Holt called from the road to say the unmarked would pass every 20 minutes. The orchard breathed like a chest finally opening. They didn't win because an antagonist was smitten by lightning. They won because the ground gave up what it had been forced to hold, because a woman who loved maps built a trap for men who love shortcuts, because a sheriff decided the law is a verb you do with your hands, because a teacher knows exactly when to lay on the horn and not let go, because a dog understood now, because a girl knocked 2 and 2 and a man opened the door.